right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 27th Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. Call the meeting to order, and we'll start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before we jump into tonight's agenda, we do have one member joining us remotely, so I'll entertain a motion to allow remote participation.
So made. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries 6-0-0. That throws me off a little bit. Mr. Taylor, if you don't mind taking a minute and just sharing your reason for being remote tonight and if anyone is in the room with you.
There's no one in the room with me, and I'm on work travel in North Carolina.
All right, well, thank you, sir. I'm sure it's warmer there than it is here, and safe travels home. We do have a couple of members that are not with us tonight, and because of remote participation, any other votes we do tonight, we will do roll call vote. With that, any review or additions to tonight's agenda?
Just that I don't think we have minutes to review.
Correct, that is correct. I was unable to find them as well, so we will table that to August, because we do not meet in July. And I know Mr. Cutter had sent a note earlier today. We were planning on having the new superintendent joining us this evening. He was unable to make it tonight due to a family obligation, but we do look forward to having him joining us at a future meeting in the fall when he officially starts next week.
I appreciate his willingness. To me, that says a lot, so thank you.
Just as a heads up, the minutes were shared with the committee on May 24th.
Were they?
I couldn't find them.
I mean, I have.
Were you just special?
I have them in front of me.
Special?
On May 24th? I don't see them.
Did
No.
they go?
I didn't, yeah, and I'm looking at my email right now, May 24th, there's nothing there.
Let me make sure, right? Litchfield Budget Committee meeting, May 23rd, 2024. Yeah, and maybe he just sent it to me? I don't know why.
I don't see it either.
Okay, well, here's what I'm going to do.
Can you forward them?
I will forward them.
Sweet.
You are special, thank you.
Yes.
All right, so we will, we'll have time to review those and then approve them at our August meeting. Any other additions or review to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I will open up for public input. Seeing no members of the public with us tonight, I will close public input. We have one more public input session before we conclude tonight. Next, we have correspondence. I'll quickly read correspondence since our last meeting in May. Thank you to Ms. Stevens for pulling this together. On May 24th, Town Administrator Kim Kleiner notified the committee of the new procedure to post meeting agendas for the new town website, which, by the way, I love the new town website, and that process was very smooth. On May 24th, bookkeeper Heather Sneman shared the April 2024 revenues and special fund balances and the May 24th budget report. On May 28th, Ms. Kleiner sent a corrected first quarter comparison report. On May 30th, Ms. Kleiner notified the committee of the new fee rate structure approved by the Board of Selectmen effective June 1st. On June 1st, School Board Rep Andrew Cutter responded to questions asked at the previous committee meeting. He noted the LMS solar project change from capacitors to battery storage was first communicated at the May 14th meeting with vendor Dynamic Grid. He noted that of the special education underspend, 96%, or approximately $550,000 is due to staffing shortages. Finally, he noted that some of the year-end encumbrances may be eligible for grants or impact fees as the school district has used for previous blue light and radio purchases. On June 3rd, Ms. Kleiner shared the June 2024 town newsletter as well as instructions on how to create an account on the new town website. On June 10th, Ms. Kleiner announced the hiring of Scott LaCroix, town building inspector. On June 21st, Ms. Sneman shared the June budget report and May revenues and special fund balances. On June 26th, Police Chief Dan Jones shared upcoming dates for his stress management classes offered to all town employees, board, and committee members. He noted that stressors can come large and small, and the natural response is the same. The committee is invited to attend as their schedule allows. And then finally, on June 26th, Mr. Cutter shared the June BA and encumbrances report. That is our correspondence since our last meeting.
Just means that I send too many emails.
What was that?
Heard
Yeah.
my name a lot. Sent my email.
We will skip over the review and acceptance of minutes. Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Cutter. And with that, we will welcome Mr. Leary and move into town business, updates from the town.
Let's see. We've had discussions on warrants changing fees for unlicensed dogs. Apparently, there's a thing going around town where people are moving in, new residents, and not registering their dogs. And the girls at the front desk will ask them every time if, do you have a dog? Some people are saying no when they have dogs, so we're getting reports, so, yeah, we're looking at what our options are as far as, fining people who mislead the clerks.
Is there, like,
We have
do
to
you
go by
have to
statute.
sign, like, do you have to sign, like, under penalty of perjury? Because that's not good.
It's not good. And-
That's bad.
And then, you know, we have a lot of people in the town that do it the right way, but there's some people that try to skirt it, to save, I don't know, $9 or $12, I don't know.
Is it even that much? I thought it was like 3 years.
I think it's $9 for a spaded or neutered dog.
It's less if you're a senior citizen, I found that out.
Yeah, it's like $3. I think I helped somebody like $3.
What's the age for that?
I don't know, but mine was $6, I was happy,
There
or
you go.
$3 something.
Oh, wow. So, let's see, and then we got, so yeah, so we're looking at what we do, but that falls under a state statute, so we're looking into it.
That's just sad. So go out and register your dog.
Please do.
And don't lie.
And don't lie, yeah, lying's bad. So, and then I think we have the farmer's market, all set to go.
Nice.
We discussed that again the other night, I think we've got it all worked out. Fire impact funds, we voted to move $35,000 out of there into the, pay the bond again, as we've done in years past. Stormwater ordinance and compliance, we're up to date on that. And then, we also approved the paving project, for the town, we finally got that settled. So, and that's about it.
Questions for Mr. Leary this evening?
When is paving set to commence? Do we know yet?
As soon as Continental can get it on the schedule.
Yeah.
Other questions for Mr. Leary this evening?
If by chance they don't get to it this year, we'll just pile it into next
I
year.
was gonna say, cause for our town, we usually do it early
It's usually,
spring.
yeah, they
We
usually do
usually
April.
very early,
He
yeah.
like warms his machines up with Litchfield.
Yeah.
So, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
I didn't know if you knew what the status with the fleet of police cars is these days. They seem to be like spending a lot of time at Edwards.
They do spend a lot of time at Edwards.
Because we haven't replaced a car in years.
Yeah. We replaced one within our budget last year, but the other one got voted down, so I expect we're gonna see them there more, until we get the fleet up and where we need it to be.
Do we have any right now that aren't worthy of being on the road, or?
No, they're all worthy to be on the road, they're undergoing a lot of repairs, and it's getting expensive, it really is.
Other questions for Mr. Leary this evening?
A little disappointed you didn't bring up the parade,
The Memorial Day parade, or the Fourth of July?
July.
Fourth of July parade's all set, they just have a couple of items to work out.
I know, but you normally, like in a meeting, I was waiting for you to say, we have 4th of July parade coming.
We have a Fourth of July parade, yeah, there's
I think
just
it's
one
a-
item they're working out, yeah.
I think it's important for people too that have never been stuck in that traffic to know the hours and where the route is, because you wanna go around it. You
Yeah.
wanna take 3A, cause I get stuck behind it.
The
Yeah.
3A?
Starts at,
No, on
Albuquerque.
Albuquerque.
Oh, Albuquerque, yeah.
starts at Hidden Creek and
Hey,
goes
oh,
to
yeah.
the high school, is that right?
No, it's gonna come here.
Right, so,
Because, yeah, usually you expect it down 3A. You don't expect it on Albuquerque.
right. So if you are between those hours, I suggest don't take Albuquerque,
Yeah.
swing to 3A.
It's 10 o'clock again, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
I think so.
So get home early.
Or late.
We're late.
Or find your spot along the route,
Yeah.
you know?
All right, if nothing else from Mr. Leary this evening, we'll move into Mr. Cutter, updates from the school.
No material updates from the school tonight.
Find that hard to believe.
All right. So quite a few things for the budget committee, and I sent a few links over to you. One of them I'm actually going to pull up this evening. I'm not able to project on the screen, so I'll refer to the link that I sent for encumbrances, and we'll walk through that. Before doing so, one of the other things that the board talked about last night was enrollment. Obviously, this time of year, we closely watch enrollment for notably those coming into kindergarten. Currently, as of June 19th, so fairly recent, we had 74 kiddos that are registered for kindergarten next year. Our trigger is 77 for that fifth teacher. We're watching that closely. The board discussed this at length last night, and we're looking at monitoring this over the next couple of weeks. Our next meeting is July 10th, but we're getting close to being able to say, yes, we're going to need a fifth teacher. We're not ready to make that decision quite yet.
Or we don't need a fifth teacher if you're at 74.
We have this debate every year.
I'm just saying, like, right now, the numbers would say you don't need a fifth teacher.
Correct, but you know, the past few years, we've been in this exact same position, 74, 75. This past year, we went up to 83,
Yep.
right? And so we're anticipating that being a very viable option because of the new units coming into town.
That's what I was gonna say. I think that's a hard thing to predict this year because you have so many new units that are gonna
Correct.
open in the fall.
But
and
we're
you-
also seeing a national trend of more people not having kids, period. So just because people are moving in doesn't mean they're gonna come with kids.
But what's
Just
the
look at-
probability that we hit 3, right? And that's really what we're weighing right now.
And that money would come from where if you decided to hire a new kindergarten teacher?
Was it
Well,
budgeted?
we have the separate account
Right.
for this scenario.
Yep.
And also, we have a number of positions that remain open in the operating budget, so to be determined, that would be an end of next year decision on where that money
But
comes.
based on space concerns, would it make sense to consider a return of 19 to 20 kids in the classroom to relieve stress on other areas within the building?
I think that creates a lot of stress on the staff, and so
Well, there's gonna be staff under stress, it's just a question of which
Mr.
stress.
Principal Mitchell has a plan to accommodate this, should we move forward with it. Yep. So that's enrollment. I think the other thing to note is we started the year, end of September, with 1,178 kids. We ended the year with 1,178 kids. There was some fluctuation in
Right.
between, here and there, but what we started with is what we ended with in total.
Great graduation ceremony, by the way.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people.
Yeah, thanks for attending, by the way. Yep.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yep.
So are we tracking also the 9th grade? Because now that school's ended,
8th into 9th.
the 8th into 9th, now that school's ended, now you should start, if people are choosing to leave,
We
you
are,
should start seeing the transfer paperwork.
we already have, and unfortunately, the transfer paperwork that we received at last check, we've only received for a couple of kiddos.
That's
And-
not unfortunate, that you should be fortunate,
But
you
I-
should be happy.
We are, and let me rephrase that, right? We believe that there's more kids that
Yes.
are leaving than have filed the
Unfortunately,
paperwork.
from a planning.
No, I
standpoint.
agree, because
So,
realistically, they can't.
We're not actually gonna know until,
But as we're tracking kindergarten, are we also tracking 8th grade?
yes.
Because,
We're
no,
watching that very
my
closely.
experience has been that, yes, the paperwork won't be filed till July, August, because you don't wanna send the paperwork too early, because at that point, they're no longer officially a student of your school, which means you can't graduate into 8th,
Why not
9th
just send
grade.
an email to all eighth grade
We have.
parents inquiring?
We have.
We have.
That's been
right.
done, yeah, by
So there
Principal
should
Grantham.
be a.
Yep.
an
And you would
idea.
think that if they are moving, they would respond, yes, we're
You'd
moving
think,
on.
but
I know, but I
mean,
mean,
we
that's
had
what
the
you've
same
done. Can't do
situation.
much else than that.
No, yes, no, leaning yes,
Yeah,
leaning no,
It's a tough spot.
right.
People don't answer, they don't answer. It's
Well,
just- it's
people-
rude, but it's-
Well, people are also probably concerned about any, like, oh, my kid's leaving, what's gonna happen in the class, so it's, I get it.
So, stay tuned, right, that's a number we're watching closely. Before we get into encumbrances, which is really the meat of what I wanna talk with the board about tonight, I just do wanna say that, with last night, we're really closing the chapter on fiscal year '24, and we're starting to move forward with our fiscal year '25. We have a number of key departures, amongst the administrative staff. In fact, the top 5, administrative staff are leaving the district. And I'm happy to report, we have a new superintendent that's joined us. Unfortunately, just on that note, he was scheduled to be here this evening. He had a family commitment that came up. He was in town today. I met with him. He did send his sincere apologies to the committee, but very much looks forward to working with you guys in July.
I think it's a little premature to say that, because I thought I saw a negative on 24 for the capital projects, so it's still, it looked like the number was still running at negative 17,000 despite the transfers in.
We haven't even talked about that.
No, so I'm just saying, like, yes, we want to close it, but I don't know that we fully can.
We can, for sure.
Okay.
We
That's your opinion. Okay.
So, that being said, we also have a new special education director coming in. We have a new curriculum director coming in. We have a new athletic director coming in. And of course, the business administrator position still remains open. We're continuing to, in fact, we were having interviews just today for that position, so.
I heard a discussion last night during the first part of the board meeting about Mr. Totten potentially offering support because of the timing of that transition. Is that, I didn't hear the full discussion. I started.
Yeah, Mr. Totten is supporting the district for an additional 3 days to make sure that we get through the initial audit paperwork for the year, finishing end-of-year submissions with the state, and just making sure I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Well, I appreciate that. That's-
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
That's where we stand with that. So with that, again, we look forward to July 1 and starting the new chapter with the new administrative unit in town.
Why don't we pause there before we jump into encumbrances? Any questions on anything not related to encumbrances?
Mine was only had to relate to the capital, whatever 30 it is, where it looked like there was still a
Fund 30.
negative, whatever you would call it. It looked like there was still a deficit, and what would the plan be to resolve that?
So let's get into that with the encumbrances.
Okay.
Before you do that,
Yeah.
maybe it's appropriate to mention that yourself, myself, the new superintendent, the town administrator scheduled a meeting for the four of us to sit down.
Yes, that's right.
and gather and start to do some work together, maybe have some
Build
conversations.
bridges?
That's the idea.
Yep, and so we've coordinated that. That will be actually just prior to the school board meeting on the 10th.
On the 10th, yes, right, it
Yeah.
was the 12th and it moved back, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great, that's good.
Yeah. It's a new day.
For sure. All right, so encumbrances, hopefully you all received the Excel workbook that I shared. This actually is pretty much the same that I shared with the budget committee last month. So no really material changes. So if we start and look at through the file,
This is the fourth tab that says EOY.
this is the fourth tab, thank you. It says EOY, end of year, transfers encumbrances. That's the tab we're gonna focus on. Okay, so if we take it at the top, you'll see revenue over expected is $132,518. Underneath the revenue tab, it details out where those sources of revenue came in from that were over what we were anticipating for the year. Right, and so that revenue tab details the 132,518. Notably, tuition from out-of-district students is a part of that. You have some interest, as we always do, in this account. And you have special ed aid that was above what we had projected. Those are the main drivers. In addition to that, you'll note, and this is a number that is fluctuating slightly until we actually get the closure of the books. But right now, we're on track to have an underspend of our operating budget of $1,450,000, right, which is sizable.
Does that include the land purchase, though?
It does, so that's all in, we'll get to that.
No, I'm just saying, so
Yeah.
the underspend, realistically, we should set that aside, because that was not a non-purchase, operating
Less
wise.
than $1 million.
And it is, and it's broken out a little bit further
No, I
down.
just want to just make it clear that it's not 1.4, like, operational underspend, it's a
It'll
different.
be 1.1.
Right, okay.
Right. So the 1.45, in addition to the excess revenue, leaves us with a starting fund balance of $1.582 million. So that's our starting point, and then we go from there down. Right, and so out of the 1.582, again, a number that is pretty lock solid at this point. We know we're in the hole on food service by $82,000. We've got to cover that deficit. That comes off.
Can I pause you real quick?
Yes.
So you mentioned when you started this that this was the same document we looked at last month.
The numbers have changed.
Okay.
Right, but
And-
the
sorry.
areas in column BC, those are pretty much the same.
Okay. And the votes from last night's meeting are in column H.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, yep. And so the board, knowing that we have to close those deficits, we voted 4-0 at the time. Mrs. Ames was not
Okay.
not at the meeting at that moment. She joined in a little bit late. And so that passed the board 4-0 to transfer that money. Ms. Douglas, to your point on capital projects, yes, and as reported last month, there's $17,576 in remaining change
Oh, it's the
orders.
fire stopping.
Right, and that is the fire stopping and the additional work regarding the cement blocks and the extra insulation as a result of the firework that needed to be plugged up. That was an additional scope change order, $17,576 is that work, we have to close that out. That also passed 4-0. Then we have what was presented to the town in March for transfers to the employee benefits, transfers to the building maintenance, and transfers to the capital improvements. All of those were voter approved in March. All of those will happen out of this number. So if we take the 1.482, take out the transfers that are voter approved, we end now with a balance of $1,054,186. From there, then we talk about, all right, well, what if we think about really a year and a half ago, right, when we're in the fire station community room and we're talking about special education and how do we budget for it, and the board, can we commit to returning the underspend for special education? The board at the time said yes, we're honoring that, right? The underspend for special education is $645,125. That will go. We're subtracting that out here, but you'll see that's at the bottom,
Right.
where that will be part of what is returned to the taxpayers.
And I appreciate that, the clarity on this, the transparency of it, and the willingness to honor that original discussion,
Yep.
so. Having been one of the biggest critics and cynics of this, I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you.
But you're not returning it all.
Well,
We're returning all of the underspend for special education.
it's added in back at the bottom.
Yeah, it's at the bottom.
So it's
right?
removed so that when they figure out their encumbrance balance available, it's
Correct.
not included.
Correct. So that 645 comes off, means that our amount to potentially encumber from is now at $409,061. From there, we get into the actual encumbrances. You'll note that row 11 is a transfer for Fund 30, right? And this was a transfer, I actually forget the amount. It was a transfer that the board decided was more appropriate to use the Capital Improvement Expendable Trust Fund for the purpose of the elementary school. Because that, instead of encumbering that money from our operating budget. right?
$7,500, was that
No, I think it was more like 40,000.
it? Yeah, there's a $40,371.
That one. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Right, and so that was originally proposed as a potential to encumber out of the operating budget and out of the fund balance. The board made the decision that no, we're going to have a public hearing at our next meeting, and use, and hopefully that's approved, and then use the capital improvement for that
So
purpose.
what is the so that's to cover what precisely, exactly?
It's to cover additional expenses as a result of the elementary school project that have happened throughout the year.
So that where is that $40,000 reflected on this document?
It's not in this document because it's gonna come out of our expendable trust fund, which is on which is where Mr. Totten tracks it in his budget files.
I got it. Thanks.
All right, so encumbrance starting point is $409,061. From there, there were a number of items, really regarding safety, and a couple things due to really significant age, that the board actioned last night. Almost all of the items that I'm about to present passed 5-0. Mrs. Ames did join at this point, with the exception of the last one, which is referred to as a robot liner. We'll talk about that. That one passed 4-1. So the rekey of GMS, all of the exterior doors have been rekeyed along with the other buildings. You might recall this happened a couple of years ago. The interior doors were never rekeyed. This is now rekeying the interior doors of the building. That's at $7,859. The board actioned to add in a few additional blue lights, notably at GMS and CHS for some of the exterior doors that do not have this blue light system. This was also noted as a Homeland Security thing, and so we're addressing that here. GMS radios, so there is a need for additional 5 radios within additional areas of the GMS building. That's at 5,110. LMS bathroom partitions, and there's a picture if you click the link. Look, these partitions are original to the building. They're very old. So aren't the sinks, by the way, and the mirrors and all this jazz. The ask right now, while the board did talk about that, we didn't actually get a quote in time, so we weren't able to figure out what the actual cost would be to repair the bathrooms or to replace some of these fixtures. Right now, we do have a quote for all the partitions, right? So in the stalls, the partitions between the stalls. That's at $23,281. That just needs to get done to gross.
Guess the question is, are you gonna do ceiling or floor?
They're plastic dividers. I don't think they go all the way to the ceiling.
Well, some hang from the ceiling and some
No,
are
I
supported on the floor.
I don't know.
Something from the wall,
Yeah,
I think they're from the wall.
oh, good, so some kid
lagged
just
into the wall.
hangs on them,
We do
fantastic.
a lot of those.
Door sweeps at both LMS and GMS, just to prevent critters from accessing the building, 4,960. You'll note if you've been to GMS anytime recently, there's some spray paint areas around the curbing to just to mark off troubled areas that really do need to be addressed. So this is fixing the curbing at GMS for 5,000. A new intercom system, which is also extremely old and malfunctioning at both GMS and LMS. GMS is at 25,644. LMS is at 25,909. Exterior speakers at LMS and GMS for $9,000. Again, these things are decades old, malfunctioning. Many times they don't work.
Can I ask a question on that? So the exterior speakers wouldn't tie into the intercom system?
Intercom is internal to the building. The exterior speakers are external but plugged into the intercom.
So they can talk through those speakers.
They can
Right,
use,
so
they
if
use
you're
the
dri-
intercom, so the intercom system you purchased doesn't include exterior speakers?
Correct.
So, I mean, the only thing I would encourage is the new top 5 coming in. A lot of these safety things would have been eligible for various grants. So rather than come to the taxpayers or using taxpayer funds, I sincerely hope that we can see greater pursuit of grants
And
for
we
these
have.
kind of things.
We have. There was research of grants and due diligence on all of this, as well as the use of impact money, of which I know as a part of Mr. Totten's, one of his final tasks he was going to do is there's about 2,000 and change that expires from one of the impact fees on the
That's
school side.
noted somewhere.
Yeah, there's a note here. Yeah, impact fee of 2,641 for the rekeying of GMS. That is being submitted to the Board of Selectmen for approval. We've already vetted that with Town Administrator Kleiner, that this is a valid use of impact fees.
Right. No, there is a list that goes out every year of the various schools, and there's a lot of districts that seem to be a lot more diligent than some of our past administration has been. So I would just encourage, as we move forward, grants first, taxpayers second. So, thank you.
Then we have an independent workstation for a couple of special ed students. It's $2,300. And then the ad last night, which has been talked about in past board meetings, is the amount of time necessary for our very short custodial staff, who also does field maintenance at this point, to stripe fields. And the board made the decision to lease 1 year, no commitments after 1 year. We can get out of it if it doesn't work, but lease a robot liner for $16,696, which makes lining the fields far more efficient, far more simple, and allows our custodial staff to focus on custodial type work.
Sounds like a great booster club thing, because how much is it for purchase?
Purchase is an option for this unit.
Do we know how that compares to, and if you don't have that answer tonight, it's fine, I'd just be more curious, like, if we looked at the hours that Dave and his team spent to line the field.
I asked that question last night.
How does that compare to this spend?
We weren't able to quantify that.
But it's way under, because I'd asked that question when this was
So
brought up the last
does this
time.
also line
At the same-
baseball fields and
Yes.
softball fields?
This lines all of our fields and you program it, it goes
Football,
back to its
soccer.
home.
You could use that out at summer.
And we talked about that too, as far as utilizing the town.
I was just gonna say that when I coached at LMS for a couple of years and then at
Kids did
Campbell
it,
for
right?
another 6, I did it.
The coaches did it,
coaches
the
did it.
parents did
Coaches
it.
did it. There's no reason why they can't do it.
So I look forward
then
to the
we had the
spirited
kids doing it
debate
too.
when that goes out
There's no reason why they
public.
can't do it. Get involved.
It's out in public since yesterday.
I mean,
Yeah,
I-
that's-
I think the approach of a 1-year trial to see if this is a potential solution is
Well, we know how that's gonna
fine.
work.
It's
Oh,
better than investing
If it
multi-years
doesn't work,
into
we
it or
stop it.
purchasing it.
I mean,
but
like,
who defines it works?
we'd have to rely upon the administration who's actually using it, right?
It's amazing, when you go to fields that use a robot, like I've been to several tournaments, and it's, I mean, it's, those
Crisp.
lines are dead on.
Dude,
It's
I
like-
was-
It's phenomenal.
I was at a Cincinnati Reds game, and the coach, they had people out there with like the little trees, the template and the chalk. They
For,
didn't have
for
a
me,
robot
this is
willing to-
not about the cool robot. For me, this is really about the labor and having our custodial staff focus on the work that they need to do.
I don't disagree with you. I think the problem is that this used to be a booster club. This used to be a volunteer-based thing, and unfortunately, I know it's a society thing or whatnot, but we're going more to why volunteer when I can pay someone to do it? And to me, that's sad. To me, this is not a taxpayer expense. This is a booster club expense. This is if you want it, then raise the money for it. It should not be on the backs of the people in town. This is a want.
You're paying anyway for them line fields.
But I shouldn't be, because it should be.
And now we're paying
Booster
extra
club,
services for
PTO,
maintenance of our buildings because we
other
don't have
people.
staff to do it.
But again, this is the whole conversation of whose responsibility should it truly be.
It's schools,
The teams who want, the kids who want, the families who want the teams.
and that they're under the schools.
Then we should be finding an offset somewhere else. It's, again, start charging more.
In any event,
Participation fee.
So
the end number, just to summarize, the end number that remains after those encumbrance actions is $283,102.59. So that's remaining in the operating budget as a positive. We add back in the $497,000 for the elementary land that's going right back to the taxpayers. We add back in the $645,125 for special education, and we get a net number to return to the taxpayers of $1,425,227.59.
I have
Can
two
you-
minds on this one. I think it's great that we were able to utilize taxpayer money more efficiently than some of us thought. On the other hand, this is gonna be ugly when it comes to tax season.
So
It's gonna be a lot of spikes. It's gonna be an artificial depression again.
if we're able to hire, right? So the other things that I really want to highlight to the budget committee tonight is the overall percent of underspend. 86% of the underspend is directly related to personnel budget from roles that we were not able to fill. And out of underspend for special education, that's 645,000, 99% of that is from personnel we weren't able to hire.
And how does that compare to past years with special ed when we were returning 10% of their budget?
Well, I mean, we have significant open resource needs, right? And
Not
I just
disagreeing,
wanna,
but apples to apples. If we're gonna say 99% this time, 10 years ago when we were returning a couple 100,000, how did that relate?
I don't know, Larry.
yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I think that special ed number is tied to paras and
Absolutely.
other positions that haven't been hired.
So I want to just reiterate and close the thought if I may, right? So while this might seem like a great win for the taxpayers, and that's phenomenal, $1.4 million is being returned, I want to reiterate the fact that this is coming on the backs of the people who are doing the job every day, who are working sometimes double time or more to fill and make sure, to fill a need and to make sure our students have what they need to be successful in education, right?
So can I just ask for clarification, because this is where I'm confused, but I think I know what it is. You said at the beginning that the 1,582,518 at the top, the green,
Yes.
included the monies that, for the land purchase, but they don't, right?
The 1,582,000.
Does not appear to be put.
Oh,
It's not, it can't.
that's
No,
right.
it
You're,
doesn't.
you're right. That was already separated
So it's just a
out.
line item down the bottom.
That's
Because
correct.
I'm
That
trying to
was
do the
already
math, it's
separated.
like,
Because otherwise it'd be
we
2
started with
million.
1.5 and we're giving back 1.4.
Yeah, yeah. No.
What is, Mr. Cutter, what is, this may have just been a placeholder from the workbook, what is, row 29 that has the 697K projected amount?
So when we budget the year, right, or when we went into this fiscal year, we knew that there was already $497,000 for land in our budget.
Got it.
We already knew that.
I got you.
Right, and the anticipation at the end of the year is that we try to return 200,000 in underspend from that budget.
I got you.
That's what that number is.
Thanks.
And Carrie, to your point, if you're concerned about the tax rate going up and down, why not, let the schools spend that $800,000 so it'll keep it balanced?
Dude, I think they should have put in a warrant article for helping pay the solar array. 1.4 million would have been a nice way to put this year's contribution towards it, but we chose not to. I agree that there are things that we could have done, but I also think that it's a testament to, we need to be serious about, like, yes, there are needs, but is this job market going to change anytime soon?
Well, they still have 2 days to use the overspend if you wanna put it on the solar panels.
It would have
Hasn't
to be,
ended yet.
it'd have to be a warrant article because it'd have to be a
Why?
revolving fund.
Why?
Because we don't, the bill's not due for 5 years.
I have to put it in a reserve account.
It has to be in a reserve
Why don't you tell
account.
them you wanna be billed tomorrow?
I do think, just kind of summarizing the encumbrances that you went through, minus the liner, although I do understand the thought process behind that on the people side. The fact that everything else is focused on safety, for the most part, I mean, you can tie everything back to school safety with all of those, even the bathroom partitions. I think it's a wise way to spend that money.
I agree with JD. I think he stole my thunder there. I think everything is, with the exception of the robot liner, I think that's a huge waste of money. However, the question I do have is, you have this special ed money that you haven't spent yet. And we've talked a couple of years during budget season about creating a reserve in case you ever have to have a shortfall.
Mhm.
Have you guys moved on that at all, or?
There is a reserve account.
So you do have specifically for that? An
Absolutely.
expendable trust fund that can't be touched?
Yep.
Okay.
Let me just,
And what would your balance be in there?
yep, I knew you were gonna ask that. Give me a second.
Because I think before you return any money to the taxpayers, you should make sure that a fund like that has got what you need.
You
in it.
can't, that has to be on warrant.
Huh?
It's
That
too
has to be
late
on
now.
warrant.
Special Education Capital Reserve Fund, as of the end of May, had 163,535.
Have we tapped into it recently?
We have not.
Because we've had underspend.
Yeah. Well, I know that sometimes some people felt the need to hit that first to make the underspend, so it was weird.
Ryan makes a good point about having a warrant for that. Is it feasible to be able to set some of that aside and go to the taxpayers in March and say, we have this money, we'd like to build this fund? Because it should be much more than
You
that.
can't, because your book's
Yeah.
closed June 30th.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We can't. Right, but I mean, that's,
Okay.
come, we know how all this goes, right? But
Yeah.
come deliberative and come March of next year, hey, we returned $1.4 million. I'd like to start to ask for $250,000 a year to put aside for the purchase of the solar array.
Yeah. Well,
You know what I mean? I don't know.
You
how that
had me
goes.
until you said solar array.
Well, I think we're on the hook for it. We should be
We're on the
paying.
hook, and we need to have a plan for that, for sure.
Whose idea was that?
Any additional questions on the encumbrances?
No, I just think that I would encourage people when it comes to budget season. Yes, we want to assume that every position will be filled and whatnot, but the reality is it's not gonna happen. The job market is where the market is. Nationally, there's shortages. So we should realistic budgeting, like, it's just, if we know, we know.
Is it still the case that every school district is hurting for Paris?
Yes, for sure. And
Has
just on,
anything changed with the updated contract, or do you think we won't see that until the fall?
we're optimistic with the updated contract, but we really haven't seen any massive increase.
Is there an ability to look at, an agency?
Yes.
Was that within the purview of the contract? Because I know we contract out and we get paras, so I was curious as to whether or not
You're doing that with custodians, right?
We are. That has to go through
Right.
various approvals, but it's an option.
But if the concern is that we're not, and I've noticed our legal fees in special ed tend to be run above budget, if that's related to that, then perhaps it's a conversation you should have. So,
I mean, I won't, I've read all the positions that are open in the district in past meetings. I'm not gonna do that tonight. I have them in front of me, right? We have a lot of positions
No, absolutely.
that are open.
And I think one of the things we have to be realistic too is, as statewide populations decline, that also is gonna affect our state aid.
Yeah.
So if, as school population declines, that it's gonna affect that side, so it's,
I think it's gonna take you time to get back to where you need to be staff-wise. I mean, we've talked about this for a couple of years. It's not so much the money, it's the environment that was here for a lot of years. And as you start to turn the corner and build the environment back to where people wanna come to Litchfield, I think it will be attractive again.
That's
It's just gonna take you some time.
the hope.
it could be.
Any other questions on the encumbrances or BA report?
I do have a question on the encumbrances,
Yes, sir.
specifically cell B28, if Mr. Cutter could, not necessarily tonight, but as a follow-up, that's approximately 215 to 220,000 of underspend. Is there any way that I can get the top 3 line items that contributed to that 215 to 220,000 of underspend?
Well, a follow-up, or in addition to Mr. Taylor's question,
I didn't
I
get the
was
first
looking
part.
at that 14% as 14% of 283, not 14% of 1.4, because I assumed you weren't counting the land purchase and special ed has its own breakout.
That's right.
So the 14% is actually more like $45,000.
Well, why wouldn't it be on the 1.5 though? Because the 1.5 does not include the
Well, because-
land purchase. This is all how we're spending.
Well, I
How
know,
Wait a
it's
second,
created.
expenses under budget, so if it's expenses under budget, and I'm looking at a percentage of overall percent of underspend, I would read that as 1.45, but anyway,
I
none of
hear
us
you.
know for sure. If we could ask, Mr. Totten,
Yeah.
to clarify which number we're looking at as far as that 14%. And if it is, falls down to that 40,000, then I don't care as far as the top
it-
3 line items. But I do care about the top 3 line items at 210,000 or 215,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difference of $200,000 or $40,000. Yeah, it's a big swing. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any other questions?
You have to rein in the food service at some point. You gotta figure out what you're gonna do there.
So I'll remind you, right, in this next fiscal year, we included the line item for the deficit, right?
There's
So now it's
$100.
$100,000, it's budgeted.
But it shouldn't be, so we should get it back out.
You say that, but again, I don't wanna open the can of worms here.
Go for it.
We're already the highest in southern New Hampshire for our meal prices.
No.
It's
No.
true.
I paid $5.50 for lunch. You beat that?
Yeah, but I'm gonna assume you were benchmarking against
Different school
public,
system.
public schools.
Not,
Right.
but you just said you're the highest in southern
In
New
public
Hampshire.
school.
Public schools.
We are public school. Charter school is a public school.
Yeah.
It's a part, it's
Well,
a,
once again, Ms. Douglas, I stand corrected, you are correct.
I am,
You're-
well,
you're
just,
the
if you're
highest,
gonna
yeah.
say
You win.
that you're the
Anyways.
highest,
Anyways,
then
moving
that
on.
means there's no room to go higher.
How about this? Let me rephrase. In our peer cohort, we are
Okay.
the highest, for sure.
So, so then find a way to increase your revenue in other ways. Like you were talking about those machines and the. It shouldn't, and I'm actually not opposed to the idea of taxpayers subsidizing, but it should be a request directly made to the taxpayers to choose to take that on. You guys made the decision for everybody. There was no conversation. There was no warrant article. And that's my issue with it, is the execution of how it came into play.
Noted.
Any additional questions for Mr. Cutter this evening?
Sorry I brought it up.
Seeing none, member input, new business.
Can I just like finish with that? It's like the schools do and the town do get lambasted on a regular basis for spending, for taxes going up and everything else. The fact that the school is turning around regardless of where the money came from and giving back $1.5 million to reduce taxes, we should be applauding the schools.
Sure, we should applaud the schools, but it should also make us wonder where we went wrong. How were we so far off?
We're not far off.
You're not far off.
Pay
We have
people that
budgeted
didn't
positions
exist.
that we have every expectation to hire.
Our budget, at the end of the day, should be very close to what was budgeted, and it's not. So,
It would have been if the
If they'd
positions were
hired
filled.
If you remove all of our open positions,
Is it realistic that you're gonna fill all those open positions?
You can't not.
And that's why the budget committee took an extra $200,000 cut last year.
Well, I'm just saying that.
Carrie,
On
my
top
point is,
of
we should.
the
It's a
cut the school board
philosophical, listen, you guys can have your opinion, it's a philosophical debate. Did we do our job? Did we deliver a budget that is in line with what we spent? The answer clearly is no. We can debate why that was.
Did they give back $1.5 million?
Yeah, but
Did
I
they
wanna
spend
say
it?
there's no erroneous spending here. We're being responsible and saying.
No, I'm
"We
saying
getcha,
erroneous taxing.
We're returning it.
Not spending, taxing.
We're taxing and we're returning.
But we shouldn't be returning, because our tax should be in line with our spend.
I think it would be irresponsible of us to not budget for the positions that are needed in the schools. Can't just tell people like, never mind, we don't need these 20 paras.
No, it's
But
not.
is- are those-
We can't fill them, so we're just gonna get rid
We're
of
just
them.
gonna remove them? Yeah, that's.
I'm sure that's
not
the
responsible.
only place we could cut. I'm sure that's the only reductions.
Well, that's what I'm
Well,
saying,
we-
that's what
Now
I'm
it's
saying.
We actually did cut a police
84% of our
position,
budget.
right?
That
cut a
we,
police
that we knew we
position,
weren't filling,
But he's
so.
coming back in July now, so.
No.
We've made reductions in force on the school side, right? Remember Miss Flynn? Right, no longer here. There's and a number of others.
So, yes, you can, perhaps that we just come back to, well, every year now, instead of returning 200 grand, we're returning 750. I'm sure the neighbors who are struggling to make their bills will be thrilled to know.
And I'm sure
They'll
in
be happy with
November,
their other tax bill.
I'm sure in November, when we debate next year's budget, you'll be making a large motion for reductions.
Well, I did last time, and it looks like it would've worked.
And we're gonna move into member input, new business, school facilities committee update.
So the committee met, there was a lot of time spent discussing with the architect a walkthrough of the existing building, to figure out, well, there was, one of the members wanted to go more in detail as to what would be necessary to repair it. It sounds like there was a miscommunication on what was gonna be provided versus what was expected. So he spent a lot of time going through it, reviewing the options. Didn't sound like too many got pulled off the list, but it was bringing the rest of the committee up to speed on what had been discussed. There was not a meeting yesterday because I believe it had to do with your school board meeting. There was a conflict and something that didn't
For
meet.
July.
Just- So then there was something outstanding about the structure and the chairs. The intent is to have a community chair as well as a board chair in order to improve the perception of transparency and civilian involvement.
Is that gonna be done at the July meeting?
So the school board has to approve that structure.
Got it.
Well, the board has to approve that structure. And so that was off, and then they held off until July 7th, I believe is the next meeting. And there's discussion going around,
17th.
is it 17th? Because I thought that was 7th.
No, July
Alright, I'll-
10th is the next. school
I
board
keep
meeting.
getting it's scheduled, it's canceled, it's scheduled, it's canceled. It's got very confusing. So, there,
Just a question on that real quick. So on the 10th, are you guys gonna approve the structure and then they'll put it in place on the 17th?
If it comes back to the board.
okay.
If your next meeting is not until the 17th.
No, I think what it was, so it sounded like Mr. Shoemaker was, the discussion occurred after the last meeting, but not until this one, and there was an expectation it would be approved at the next board meeting. So if you guys didn't discuss it this time, hopefully it'll be discussed
It
next
was
time.
discussed, it was just recommended to go back to the facilities committee for
Okay,
additional updates.
well then, okay, well, the expectation from the facilities was it would be approved, so I don't know that there was, so I assume they'll meet to review the comments from the board.
I think
They're
Ja-
discussing a survey to figure out what ideas would be acceptable within the community, what the expectations going forward, why, try to get a pulse on people's views and opinions in order to craft a proposal or proposals that'll be more widely accepted within the community.
And that was the discussion last night.
Okay.
Right, where the board would really like the facilities committee to continue to press getting a survey out to all, right?
Multiple forms of
So we
medium.
can get
Right.
some type of response back and start to analyze and evaluate what all this data means.
Yep, so there's there's emails about, within the committee about if you have questions, and they set up subcommittees to review different things, like how to best communicate within the community, because I believe when you guys did Campbell, the town was broken into sections, and there was a section leader, and each person communicated within that section and how to best implement something like that within the community for this project.
Picture Mr. Leary up with a megaphone on CVH. Neighbors.
So it's a work in progress, they're still working,
did
we're
my
still
part.
working on it.
Sure.
But it's a matter of, there's research being done in order to come back to the school board and the voters with a better idea, or a different idea.
So, thank you for that. I just have one additional thought, I guess, is I've watched most of those meetings and had conversations. The overwhelming positive feedback that I've heard from talking to people and seeing on Facebook is the composition of this committee is really good. I think that's much appreciated. I haven't heard a single negative thing about that. I'm starting to, my wheels are starting to spin now as we move into July, into August. We're still getting structures put together.
Yep.
And it has me thinking about, and I don't want to debate on this tonight, I'm just putting this out there. It has me thinking about what potentially is going to be on the ballot in March, if anything, to be determined by this committee to the school board.
We won't determine it, it'll go to the school board, will make the decision.
Right.
Yeah, a recommendation from the committee
So
to the
there's an
school board.
acknowledgement of what the general timeline and expectation is for the warrants. How something needs to be more formalized and ready to go by December, and pulling back the dates.
Good, that's good to hear.
So there is a discussion of what needs to be done when.
And
So we have some.
Yeah, one more, because that's good to hear, because the second part of my comment was, if the realization is, well, we don't have enough time, we need more time, my concern is we'd wind up in March of '26 with the same conversation we had this year of people and stuff.
Well, there was a discussion about state aid and how it plays a role. Like, we stay with certain things, I think we get bumped down, or we're in a line, but if we reapply, there actually might be eligibility for more aid, because you can revise the numbers based on current numbers and where we are relative to other schools who are also on the list.
Yes.
So that's all playing a role as to what we need to have done
Okay.
and what needs to be done when. So there is a conversation and an awareness of
The timeline.
the timeline.
Okay.
I think one of the things that we've been finding out is that we were kind of misled during the other process, because we were told at one point that there was no state aid for a renovation, when in fact there is state aid for a renovation. And, you know, the architect, having him there, he was pretty open and honest, and
He's helping rewrite
And
the laws.
change,
on
well, there's
Yeah.
that, and changing the scope from net zero to
yeah,
just a traditional building saves almost half the cost of the building.
yeah.
So it was a substantial potential savings based on, so once he's gotten some of the direction there, but then it comes down to, you have some people who are steadfast in the renovate GMS, and then you have others who are like, well, that's not viable. So it's gonna be an interesting conversation to come to a consensus, because there are a lot of different opinions as to what the next path is forward.
And I did, and just, oh, go ahead, Mr. Lear.
And I'll just say that, you know, they talking about a survey or whatever, and my point to that is always, the biggest survey you're ever gonna get was the one in March. That was the vote by the town. It was overwhelming. So that should put the kibosh to a new school. So now it's the decision of how you wanna go about the renovation. Do you do a big chunk renovation, where you put in a big number and renovate the whole thing at once? Do you break it off into bites of apples and do it over a course of a few years? How are you gonna go about this? You know?
And I appreciate that perspective, because I agree with the first part of what you said, that was a survey. I think the town said no to that big price tag. Like, I think to Mrs. Douglas's point, if there is an opportunity to not only bring down the cost with net zero and potentially get more state aid, it's definitely worth that committee and the school board investigating. And just one thing I was gonna add, this week I was at the New Hampshire Superintendent's Conference on Monday and Tuesday, which is always a good opportunity to talk to other districts and things that they're working through and struggling, and building costs and construction always comes up. And I actually had a couple of superintendents and school districts say to me, knowing that I'm in Litchfield, that, you know, they've heard that we would be third on the list, that Colebrook's ahead of us, that the likelihood of Colebrook passing anything is usually slim to none. So in theory, we sat just behind Concord, and Concord can only get a certain percentage of the pot. And all of that in a roundabout way was them saying there's a possibility, there's no guarantees, that Litchfield could have more state aid available to them than we did in this last round, depending on how things play out.
And they changed, my understanding is they changed the law where before you had 2 cracks at the apple and now you have 3.
Yes.
And what happened was the one that had gone through 2 failures, because the law changed, they got reset. So they didn't time out, now they get another 3 shots at it. So before I get falling off the list.
Yep.
So it's interesting to see, but like I said, the upside is with a variety of opinions and backgrounds and expertise.
Which is good, that's what you
If
need.
we can get a consensus of, no, this is it, then at least we know that hopefully it's the right way.
And I think also going back to your point, Mr. Chair, that where you said that the people said no to the price tag. I was at the polls for 15 hours that day, and the number one thing the people said to me was, we don't need a new school. It wasn't the price tag. We don't need a new school, period. So the price tag was a big part, but it wasn't the overriding factor.
Yeah.
So I think, and I think any survey they put out, they're gonna maybe get 300 or 400 people back.
Well, I hope,
And it would be the
however,
ones that want a new school, and then they're gonna say, it's overwhelming support, we want a new school.
I
And
think-
that's not the fact.
well, I think that's a fair point, because I think however a survey goes out, you have to make sure it's inclusive of all people. It can't just be digital.
It would
can't
be a
just-
mailer.
It has to be mail.
But how many people are gonna actually mail back?
In my opinion, it almost requires
Can't help that.
going to some places where you know people are as well. Like I think that's, I know
Sounds
we're
like a
going
great
way out of our,
civics,
way out of our purview here.
stewardship project for like the high
Senior
school.
project.
Senior project, go with the clipboard. Does anybody have a poli-sci future? They can go canvas the buildings, houses?
Any additional questions for school facilities? All right, capital
The only-
improvement.
I'm just gonna make a statement. If you think they're gonna have an answer by December, not from what I've watched in these meetings, and it,
It would be hard pressed.
So I was,
and I said at the capital improvement committee meeting that it's great, people that are there participating and getting involved, but it's like anything else, it's like big government. The more you have,
The longer it takes.
the longer it takes, and that's exactly what's happening. That questionnaire has been talked about now for 3 months,
And
2
I was-
months.
and that's why, I don't know if you caught the meeting last night, but I had this direct conversation with Mr. Shoemaker, and I said, you know, I think what we need is more structure, and I think what you need truly is an agreed upon project plan, and I know there are members on that committee that can really help with this.
Have a work breakdown structure?
Right.
Absolutely.
And what date are we working to? Is it December of this year and working back to get through the process? Is it March? Is it next March of 20, like,
So I think.
what
the
date,
orig-
and
right,
what are all the tasks you need
Right.
up front to get to that date?
So I think part of the wrench that was thrown in, the plan had been to discuss the survey, but there was also a request of the architect, so we had the architect here for a date, so I think that's what shuffled that. Perhaps it has to do with maybe not meeting every 2 weeks or whatever, I don't know, but yes, if we had
You need a plan.
if there were milestones and various things, then it would be much easier to be like, okay, then we need to meet more often, or no.
We talked about
Yeah.
that, and that was kind of the guidance that I think this facilities committee really needs
Yeah.
some structure, and you need to be all working towards
Yeah.
something.
I agree. And I mean, that was why I brought that up, Ryan, because in watching and seeing where we are and thinking about that timeline of working backwards, I would hate to see something wind up because we didn't map it out correctly, that it has to push to the following March, and we know we're gonna have some people contracts that are gonna be a part of that vote as well. All right, anyways, capital improvement planning.
There wasn't really much. I mean, the biggest thing is just an RPC, just renewing their contract, basically the same contract, different dates. Then establishing the dates of when the department heads are gonna be coming forward to present to the capital, committee as far as
They went
their,
up $58 on
wishes.
the membership, by the way,
what's that?
NRPC, went up $58 on the
Yeah.
membership.
Cost of fuel.
Yeah.
And just the department heads, then the dates when they're gonna start coming in, and then establishing dates for our next few meetings.
Does that start in the fall?
It starts October 7th.
Okay.
CIP has all the department projects.
Questions on capital improvement? Seeing none, I will open it up for public input again. Seeing no one here still, I will close it for public input. And before we adjourn, just remind everyone that the Budget Committee does not meet in July. We will see you again on Thursday, August 22nd for our next meeting. With with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Before you do that,
Oh,
I
wait.
just wanted to let you know that there has been discussions with the police department about what they're gonna do about their space needs next door. And
They
they're
should.
talking about what they wanna build.
Well, once upon a
It's
time,
just
there
a
was, yeah,
preliminary.
once upon a time, there was a discussion about putting the SAU up here.
Well, they're talking about a building next to the fire station.
Yeah.
That's where they're-
How much more
which
room do
was
they
the
need?
original design.
How much more room do they need?
Dude, they doubled in size
Yeah,
within the same
that was
space.
built for 6 or 8
It's tight.
officers max. They're at 20 or 21 right now.
Miss Stevens and I walked through it last summer, and I was
It's really
shocked at how
not,
tight it was.
and it's not really designed to be
I'm not
a
saying
police
I'm not
station.
saying they don't need more room, I'm just curious, like,
Right.
they must have done a study, like, how much more room do they
But
need?
They
there
have
was one
3,500
on the,
square feet, and in the last assessment, they needed over 10,000.
Sorry, how much they have?
Yeah.
They have 3,500 and they need over 10,000.
3 times.
Because my first thought was like, where the Sally Port is, why can't you build out there? Go up 2 floors. Yeah,
I
you
think
can
from
go
what
out,
they've
like-
been discussing preliminarily, that would cost more money than a building, than a new build.
I mean,
But believe me, I'm watching it very closely.
Mr. Taylor, anything from you before we adjourn?
I don't like big numbers.
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. All right, with that, thank you, Mr. Leary. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
so made again.
Motion by Ms. Douglas, second by Ms. Stevens. Quick roll call vote. Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Cutter.
Aye.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Stevens. Mr. Burke.
yes.
And Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
And motion carries 7-0-0, no, 8-0-0, sorry. And we are adjourned. See everyone in August. Have a good evening. Have a good summer.